operations of the district, that is the responsibility of the superintendent. In compliance with the State Government Code on Open Meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. This is a meeting in public, not a meeting of the public. As our guest, you are welcome to observe and listen. These proceedings are being video and audio recorded and will become part of Judson's permanent legal record. In order that the tape adequately reflects these proceedings, please silence your mobile devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it is legally mandated that these proceedings are recorded accurately, I may have to ask for order periodically should I notice that disruptions are interfering with our recording capabilities. Once again, I extend to each of you a sincere welcome from the entire school board. Thank you for your interest at Judson ISD. We have established a quorum, and I will call roll. Mr.
Rafael Diaz here.
Mr. Macias?
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Jennifer Rodriguez, present.
Ms. Eaton?
Deborah Eaton, present.
Ms. King?
Shatanya King, present.
Ms. Pichelle?
Renee Pichelle, present.
Thank you all. And to my left is Dr. Ball, our superintendent.
Welcome.
Thank you. Would you please rise for the invocation and pledges of allegiance?
Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight to do the will of you for Judson ISD students. We ask you to guide us and to lead us so that every decision we make is in the best interest of our students. In your name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Item 2, recognitions. Ms. Taganaw, do we have any recognitions this evening? Nothing tonight. Thank you. Item 3, acknowledgement of visitors or citizens to be heard. Ms. Holmes, nothing there. All right, so we're moving right along. Item 4, consideration of consent items. I'll read the items, and if someone should want one pulled, please tell me. Item 4A, consider and take action regarding approving board minutes from the special meetings held on June 18th and June 19th, 2021. B, consider and take action regarding approving budget transfers across expenditure function categories. C, consider and take action regarding approving the submittal for request for proposal 21-09 for general and instructional supplies. D, I have been notified that we are pulling that and we'll see it return to the agenda on our next meeting Tuesday. E, consider and take action regarding approving the submittal for request for proposal 21-14 for wastewater treatment plant routine maintenance operation, Veterans Memorial High School. I'm sorry, did you say something, Miss? No? Okay. F, consider and take action regarding approving the ranking for request for proposal 21-17 for complete food safety and sanitation system. G, consider and take action regarding approving service delivery agreement for communities in schools for the 2021-2022 school year. H, consider and take action regarding approving the memorandum of understanding for the Bexar County Juvenile Board and Judson Independent School District. I, consider and take action regarding approving the College Board's College Readiness and Success Agreement CB 000299459. All right. So we'll be voting on 4A, B, C, E, F, H, and I. Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. I will do a roll call vote. Mr. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Macias?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ms. Eaton?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Ms. Pichelle?
Renee Pichelle, aye.
And Suzanne Canoyer votes aye also. G, Consider and take action regarding the service delivery agreement for communities and schools. Mr. Macias, did you have something?
I just wanted a brief perspective from Dr. Ball regarding how that collaboration with communities and schools is looking like.
Absolutely. It's a great partnership. It's a partnership that certainly, because of our times, has come in handy more than ever. We love working with communities and schools. They're very receptive to the things that our students need. So we have a great collaboration with them.
How often do we renew their contract? Is it annually?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you. No, I couldn't disagree with you. I think community schools is doing a great job. I'd like to learn a little bit more, but I did reach out to them to kind of have a greater overview from communities and schools. Last week I drove by their office to kind of sit down and talk more with them. So anyway, just want to let you know that I'm interested in seeing a broader scope of their work. So.
I will definitely, we would be happy to provide you that. I think also when Monica Garcia provided some information, but I'll have her reprint that and share that.
It's beyond. Sometimes it's better when you have face-to-face discussions on things, but you've already supplied good
Okay.
information.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so is there a motion for 4G?
Motion to approve 4G.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote again. Mr. Diaz?
Rafael Diaz, aye.
Mr. Macias?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ms. Eaton?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Shatanya King, aye.
Ms. Bichelle?
Renee Pichelle, aye.
And Suzanne Canoyer, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item 5A, discussion and consideration of action items. Consider and take possible action regarding approving of changing the regular board meeting on July 15th to July 22nd. Dr. Ball.
Yes. So because of a change of a few meetings and because we are going to close for the 4th of July, the way it works in the month of July, when we would normally be getting as staff members be ready to post information and get everything ready, it puts us in a very difficult, awkward situation. We won't have everything ready. So we're asking for the meeting to be pushed back by 1 week. This would allow us time to get more of the items on the agenda and be better prepared. But I'm open to any questions that anybody might have.
Any discussion? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please?
I move to accept.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Diaz, how say you?
Aye.
Mr. Macias?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ms. Eaton?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bichelle?
Renee Pichelle, aye.
And Suzanne Canoyer, aye. Motion passes unanimously. 5B, consider and take possible action regarding approving the transfer of certain bond proceeds from Proposition 2 to Proposition 1 of the district's 2016 bond election in order to complete various items associated with work at Eloff Elementary School, Converse Elementary School, and Rutledge Stadium. Dr. Ball.
Yes, ma'am. As I believe all the board members know that we have completed all the construction at Where the Mokes. So that's a beautiful school that's done beautiful things for us. And when that was completed, there was money left over that was budgeted for that. So as we spoke last month, we needed a wall at Converse Elementary. We also need some items to be taken care of at Eloff and at Rutledge Stadium. And where we would be taking the money from is from the funds that were not used for the construction project at Wortham Elementary.
Is there any discussion?
I just have a question. So this is, we'll be able to fix the track at Rutledge Stadium? Is that what we're going to be?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And I think that was approved last month to start with that, so now we're just transferring the money.
Dr. Ball. So just to reiterate, you did state that the extra funds from Wortham Oaks would be what is used for these three items and the projects to complete. I think we had a discussion last week regarding Wortham Oaks and their HOA and so forth. One of the things I'll tell you, I represent the area where Converse Elementary and Eloff and even Rutledge Stadium, so I hear a lot from community members within that area. I think this is quite positive that we're able to do more with proceeds of the bond, and wonder if it might be appropriate to consider some outreach to the local HOAs or to the leadership within the community, just to advise them that this is coming. I'll do my part as well, since I do represent that area, but I think this is positive. And one of the things that I will tell you is there's always been a concerned group of citizens within that community that sometimes may feel we're not utilizing our bond dollars in the best way, when this surely looks like a really good opportunity for that community. So I just want to put that out there for you to consider from the administration side.
Sure, and just so I can get clarification, to advise where the Mokes or to advise Converse Elementary?
The Converse community, as well as the Eloff community, which is Fields of Dover, Meadowbrook, those communities that will be impacted, and even the old part of Converse, which is across from the stadium. Things like that, I think, that are very important for them just to be aware. And again, I'm not saying go all out, because I don't know what that would look like, but at least some effort so that we're having some positive communications about what we're doing with some of these projects.
Absolutely. And once, yes, yes. We could do that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept this item. You've already read it, right, the first time? I move to accept.
Second.
Do a roll call vote again. Mr. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Macias?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ms. Eaton?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Shatanya King, aye.
Ms. Pichelle?
Renee Pichelle, aye.
And Suzanne Canoyer, aye. Passes unanimously. Item C, consider and take possible action regarding approval of the personnel report and updates, including new hires, resignations, and administrative appointments, 1, elementary principals, and we will take action on that after our closed session. Item 6, discussion items and reports, superintendent report. Dr. Ball.
Yes, we will start with our construction report that is in everybody's packet. Does anybody have any questions or anything specific that they would like to ask? Okay. Then we have another report that we would like to give, and we'll get started with our growth and planning report. I think that there's a PowerPoint that goes with that, and I hope everybody has met Carr, but I'm going to introduce Carr again. Carr Hornbuckle has been working very closely with our district and with Dr. Fields and with Helen Keaton as we are working through the process of the growth and planning. We've had lots of growth and planning meetings, had a lot of good communication with individuals, and we'd like to give you an update at this time. Carl, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. There's a couple of logistical things. I think we need to... So I didn't know that, so that was one question I had, was where to be. But my next question is, I think we need to pull up the presentation on Zoom so that Ms. Pichal can see it as well. While we're getting that technological help, I'll just say on behalf of the Growth and Planning Committee, I think things have gone quite well. We've had 2 of you all and now 3 board members join us for those meetings, and the idea for the report tonight was simply to give you all an update on the work that we've been doing in that committee, and give you a sense of where I anticipate we're headed as a group, to be prepared to actually present a recommendation in July. So this is really in advance of that recommendation coming forward. We think it's a good opportunity for you all to hear about this work, and frankly for us to hear from you, for us to hear kind of what your thoughts are on how things are going, and answer any questions you have or entertain any other ideas you might have about what we're trying to accomplish together. Ms. Pichal, do you see that presentation now on your screen? I just want to make sure.
I do. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Good. So can that sit somewhere where I can click? I just want to be sure. Okay. So as I mentioned, we've done great work together. We've had a total of 6 meetings to date. We started just after spring break. We've talked a lot about existing opportunities throughout the district. We used the work that we did together as a group. I know, Mr. Macias, you weren't on the board at that time, but we did a workshop earlier in the semester, and the board worked with us to help define some guidelines that would engage the thinking of the committee, kind of work with the committee in how they should work together. Oh, thank you. How they should work together to listen to the information and make give feedback about the information pertaining to the district. We also had an opportunity to visit a number of different campuses, seeing one of our newest campuses, Wortham Oaks, and also visiting an older campus to see sort of the differences between schools. And as a board, you all had talked about the importance of equity. And so I think that really resonated with the committee. It was something we've spent a great deal of time talking about and revisiting in each of our conversations. In our most recent 2 meetings, what we've done is we've begun to try to coalesce a lot of the information that we've talked about around the idea of some highlights that are likely to be projects that the district would want to take on from both a long-range plan, but also in a near term, if the district is interested in pursuing a bond election right away. And so in our last meeting, it's actually viewing it through the web browser.
Oh, sorry.
So I'll just do it this way. It's here. I can do it. Project information. So we've talked about a series of categories, if you will, for work. And by far the most interest and fervor from the committee is in the idea of addressing equity throughout the district with regards to air conditioning all of our campuses' gyms. Many of the elementaries do not have an air-conditioned gym, and secondary to that, a number of the middle schools also do not have air-conditioned gyms. When we went through a prioritization exercise, this was the number 1 item that the committee felt Judson should look at how to address. And so this slide just gives you a sense of all of the campuses that that's an opportunity where we would want to try to address that. And related to this, there's also additional work that can be done to some of the older campuses, their controls, if you think about kind of the thermostats, and replacement of some of the equipment associated with their campus air conditioning. So we see this as being a number 1 opportunity for improvement throughout the district. The next item that's actually tied into that was equipment replacement. So as I mentioned, with older campuses, what else might we need to be looking at in terms of chillers or boilers? Some of the backbone of the school that's at its lifespan or has actually exceeded its lifespan. How do we continue to be sure that we're addressing all of those needs? And this was the next highest item that the committee looked at in terms of what they felt was important for us to address. So as you all are aware as a board, there's also opportunities for future campuses. Certainly there's been a lot of discussion here in this room, but also with our committee about the need for the next middle school. Creating a middle school at the north end of the district on the property that's available adjacent to Wortham Oaks. The committee very much understands that and supports that moving in that direction. We've also spent time talking about what may become Elementary 21 and Elementary 22 in the district, future elementaries. There is an opportunity with some existing property that the district owns that's north of 35 and east of 1604 that could likely become Elementary 21. But another future campus or new facility that we've talked about quite a bit, and I'm going to come back to later, is a district and community pool. That's also something that there's been a lot of engagement on, and so I want us to talk about that tonight as well. Next, another area of real interest and desire in our committee is furthering the academic programs throughout Judson. creating many more diverse and unique opportunities for students to be plugged in. So if you think about the success of programs you have like JTech, with the new STEAM program that's coming up in the year ahead, how do we do that and? How do we do more? What we've talked about with that is that no one is at a point right now where the district would want to say, we want to do this particular program, or we want to put a program at this campus. But rather, we want to be setting the stage for what some of those next programs might be. And so what we did is we took back to the committee this idea that there are certain campuses where we've identified these would make sense as the next opportunities for programs to come along, for campus transformations. At a particular middle school like Kitty Hawk, I would just say there's been so much work that has already happened there. How do we continue that good progress? So this idea of creating these opportunities at key campuses is really part of what we might do now that also anticipates what we would continue to do in the future. And the second part of this that there was definitely a lot of consensus around was the opportunity to create makerspace learning spaces. We did an exercise early on with our committee that I think you all are familiar with, where we talked about future-ready teaching and learning spaces. We used boards that had a number of different images, and we asked our committee to use dots to indicate the images that really resonated with them. And by far, one of the images that got the most dots was an example of a makerspace, where in that photo, elementary age students are really engaged in hands-on learning. And that's continued to come up, and it's really something where that can touch every school throughout this district and therefore every student throughout this district. Not only at an elementary level, but also we think there's opportunities at a middle school level to incorporate that same type of program. So that's something that is also a real key chance to touch really all students throughout the district. Before I leave this, I certainly want to say that there's a lot to be done beyond the facilities themselves, what needs to be done on site. Some of that is infrastructure work. Y'all just talked about some of the work to be done at Converse Elementary. But beyond some of the infrastructure work, there's also opportunities in terms of our outdoor activity spaces. So making improvements at our secondary schools, like at Wagner, to address some of the issues there with the track, and create other opportunities at each of our high schools or middle schools. So that's something that I think we want to be sure we're thinking of and keeping in mind. At an elementary level, we talked about being sure all of the elementary school playgrounds have an opportunity to have like a better softball material installed and shade structures. It's something we have at Wortham Oaks, and so how do we be sure it's not just our newest schools, but all of the campuses can benefit from that? And last but not least, just looking broadly at what's happening throughout the district. You know, in terms of our technology needs, it's also something we can talk a little bit more tonight about. But our transportation department, how do we address the fact that as a district with a lot of geographic spread, we have to continue to stay on top of our need for replacing older buses and buying additional buses for new students, as well as the potential for creating a satellite hub that would have the net effect of reducing our overall travel miles. If we aren't having to bring all of the school buses back to one central location, if that could be split, then you're actually going to save in the long term, because buses at a south satellite, let's say, wouldn't have to travel as far just to make their home run at the end of the day or when they start out at the beginning of the day. So these slides were actually, we've talked about these topics. I shared this information with our committee, and where we went from there in our most recent meeting was to talk about where the district is in terms of its capacity if you all as a board choose to hold a bond election. And the reason for this is to think about sort of the budget, if you will, for what we might want to accomplish. While we've identified all these things we'd like to accomplish, how much can we get done at a given time? And so we looked at two scenarios with our committee. These are like an actuarial table that describes if there were a bond election, how those proceeds would be paid off through our INS rate over time. And I'm sharing this one tonight because this one, we're looking at a $300 million bond. if that were something that we wanted to move forward with, that would not have a net tax rate increase. You could call for an election and raise those funds through bond sales within the current INS tax structure that you have. The other schedule we showed the committee was for $350 million, and that would have was it about a 3 to 4 cent potential tax rate increase on the INS side to cover that. So we just wanted to have them understand sort of where the district might be in terms of what we could put in front of voters that wouldn't fundamentally change the tax implications for paying for this. And with that in mind, we looked at the overall list. So this takes all of those topics I showed graphically on the map and said, if we wanted to do all of these, and this is nearly $400 million worth of work, if we wanted to try to stay close to or approximate that $300 million cap, that would suggest we could get through the top 16 out of 20 priorities and be at that or close to that idea of a $300 million budget. So our numbers aren't exactly right, but that's also because we're continuing to look at some of these budget numbers and determine exactly what recommendation we want to bring forward for a cost of work and all of the associated costs that go along with that. So that, at that point, it really catches you up to where we left our last growth and planning meeting. We asked the room, with all of that information, we talked about it quite a bit, and we asked the room to weigh in with what they understood, if they felt we were on the right track. Do they feel that what we've talked about in terms of what we want to accomplish, how we're thinking about the specifics of that we're trying to do now, where we would stand in terms of a budget, how do they feel about this as a trajectory? And we had 21 voting members of our committee there that night. And of that group, 20 of them said that after discussion they were in favor with this trajectory, with this direction. And one person very kindly said, I see where you're going, but I have some reservations and I'm just not there yet. I don't feel ready to say, yes, I'm good with this direction. And in all honesty, I think that's a good thing for us. Because as a committee, if everyone there was just on board and we were sailing along, we might not know what everyone in our community thinks about this work. So it's good to get some of those questions. And so what I've got here that I want to give you all now, y'all are getting to see first, some of the information that I want to take back to our committee when we have our next meeting, which is next Monday night. One of the things that we've talked about, it kind of came up as an example, and it, as it turns out, is timely, is exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish with regards to technology. You know, we're showing them something at what I'd call an executive summary level that describes there's quite a bit of different work we could do as it pertains to technology. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's a lot that goes into that. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be done to keep the district moving forward. And as it turns out, what you all are experiencing right now are some of the things that are unknown, that we can't plan for. So if you look at these numbers, this actually adds up to a figure that's higher than what's in the current recommendation. The current recommendation has, all told, about $35 million to expend on technology. It's been identified for nearly closer to $60 million worth of work. And that's not to say that we don't need to do all of this, but at some point we also have to decide, how do we get all of these things to happen? And so one of the things we may have to go back and revisit is, we really need to address more of this technology work. I know you're shaking your head, yes. But if we're doing that, is something else going to need to move down the priority list? Do we have to think about things differently? So that's part of the work that's still to be done. So I don't necessarily know if you all have specific questions. We could talk about those, but in general, I wanted to give you all and the committee a sense that there is more data behind the executive summary of what we're talking about in each of these categories. I'll move on for the moment. We can always come back if there are questions, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about the idea of a district and community pool. You have some real advocates in your community to create something like this. And I think what we've talked about as a committee is that we're at a point where there is still more legwork to be done, at the point that Judson is ready to move forward with that. I think that there's an opportunity. Other districts have found ways to partner with municipalities to help raise some of the initial funds, actually, to help pay for this, but more broadly to come up with a shared use agreement about how the pool is staffed, how it's maintained, how it gets used. And from your point of view as a district, it's important to know some of those details because you still have to think about the student safety as a priority. How are you using it to teach swimming classes for advanced level swimmers in high school who want to compete athletically? It's not just let's build it and then everybody sort of works that out. There's things that you want to kind of make some decisions on up front. As I mentioned, there's a site that the district already owns that's been earmarked for another elementary because it relates to growth, but there's not property that the district currently has that would be ideal for a district-wide natatorium. So I think there would be more work to be done with regards to identifying the most appropriate site for a pool that would suit the district and also suit the community. And then lastly, this is an immediate segue into my next slide. There are rules that the legislature has put in place that would require us to put a natatorium into its own proposition if it were included in a bond. So at the point that the district is ready to say, we want to put this in front of our voters, it will have to stand alone as its own proposition. This all came about as a part of House Bill 3 in September of 2019. The state legislature changed a number of the guidelines that govern how districts have the autonomy to hold a bond election. Where we stand now is that what districts can put forward is a proposition for the construction of schools, the renovation of schools, the outfitting of schools, much as has always been the case. That proposition can include monies for land acquisition. It can include monies for the purchase of school buses. But there's certain exclusions that cannot be included in that general proposition, I'll call it. One of which relates directly to technology. If the district wants to expend money on technology, the legislature said that needs to go into its own proposition because the expectation is the sale of a bond to pay for that needs to be paid back on a short-term basis. You don't want to take a 30-year bond and be paying over 30 years for the life of this laptop right here that you can only really expect is going to work, is going to serve its purpose for the next 5 years. Right. And so they want voters to be able to understand this is something that we want to get the money to buy. We want to improve our technology, but we're going to pay this money off more quickly. So it's going to stand alone in its own proposition. Another category that pertains to this, as I mentioned with the natatorium, there are certain projects that have to have their own proposition. They stand alone. And there's different categories that the state uses to identify what those projects are. It may be based on their use. It may be based on the role they serve within the community. So what I mean by that is if you have a venue that seats more than 1,000 occupants, it could be a field or a stadium, it could be an auditorium, that the state sees that as having a purpose beyond one that is just serving general education. And so they want voters to be able to vote on that specifically. Now, the background on that is that they've looked at districts like Allen and Katy that have built stadiums that were themselves like $100 million. And they felt that they wanted to make it clearer for voters across the state to understand if that's something that a district wants to do, that they have an opportunity to vote on that specifically. So that's the reasoning behind that language. But the way that affects us here is that with some of the work that we need to do for the improvements of our existing fields, like at Wagner, because Wagner already has that seating capacity, even though we're not changing it, it's still a part of that facility, that field, and therefore it's going to need to be put forward to our voters in its own proposition. Now, if we're doing comparable work at Veterans or at Judson, that work can all go together we don't have to vote on Wagner separate from Judson or separate from veterans, but that idea of work is all going to have to hang together. So the likelihood is that if we move forward with a recommendation for a bond, you're looking at likely having 3 propositions in a bond. One that's a general proposition for the majority of the work, one that's specific to the technology scope of work, and one that addresses some of these existing stadium or existing field improvements. We thought it might be helpful, and I'm going to share this again with the committee next week, just as a point of reference to look at some other recent bond elections, because one of the other concerns that came up from the group was just the idea of 300 million as a number. You know, if you take that out of context, that's a big number. That there's a lot to be said about 300 million. How do we try to understand that relative to our peers, relative to other districts, even relative to the bond election that we held here in 2016? Even with 2016, where Proposition 3 did not pass, but the other 3 did pass, you know, the district, Judson, turned right around the next year and called another bond election that basically addressed that same scope. So I think if you look at those in totality, they're not that far off from the 300 million. I highlighted 2 within this. So the top half of this chart is showing kind of our neighboring districts, what's happening locally. And then the bottom half of the chart is looking across the state at other districts that are similar to Judson in their size or in their makeup, just what's not just happening here, but what's happening elsewhere. And I thought it was good to highlight 2 that are the most recent. So here we know SAISD had a bond election for $1.3 billion last November 2020. That's a big number. I mean, if we think 300 million is a big number, 1.3 billion is an even bigger number. And they had great success with that. It was by a margin much beyond just, 50% plus 1 vote. I don't remember the exact number, so I don't want to misquote, but I know it was very successful in its passage. But in doing this work, I also found that just this May, Lubbock ISD had a $420 million bond, and that also passed. So there are good examples out there of other districts that we might look at that have had success with their bond elections. I can also tell you, I don't have it on this screen, but there's a possibility that we're looking here in Judson at a bond this November. East Central is also looking at holding a bond election this November. Comal ISD is looking at holding a bond election this November. So there are other districts in exactly the same place you are that are trying to make decisions about where do we go from here and how quickly do we start to move forward. So having given you all this information, as I mentioned, part of our goal here tonight was to report out, but also to hear back. So we wanted to be able to go around the dais and ask for each of you to ask me questions, ask us questions, but also share your thoughts on how this is going with growth and planning, in anticipation that we'll be back here again, most likely in the month of July.
Ms. King, we're going to start with you. If you have any questions or comments.
No, just thank you for the breakdown here and regarding to propositions within a bond, and how that would look, and also the comparison with the other districts around us. That really helps out as well, and also the breakdown in regards to the cost that where the citizens will not have to pay the taxes, the $300,000. So I thank you so much for that breakdown, and I'm just interested in learning a little bit more.
Okay, great.
Ms. Eaton, you're next.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because I have several questions.
Good.
One question is, are you, the SR funds, is it possible that some of these projects can be covered by the SR funds?
I'll take, you want to go ahead?
Well, no, actually, it'd be great if, I was going to toss it to Bill, actually. Bill talked about ESSER with our committee and talked about some of what those funds are, when they're expected to come, and what they're liable to be tapped for, so.
So our SR funds comes with some very specific guidelines on
Right.
how to use them. So we did the needs assessment for our district. So these funds are going to be used to close the gap, the learning gap. So these funds are going to be used for instructional purposes, such as our all-day, full-day free pre-K program. We're going to use it for that. Other instructional resources and materials. So those are truly targeted for some very specific things on the educational part.
Okay, thank you, that answers
I should
that.
say the curriculum part a lot to be able to help with the learning loss that has happened.
Okay. The next one is, and I kind of wrote it crazy, so I think I'm going to have to explain it. Well, a great example is they just presented to us that we have projects at 3 schools that are going to be able to be taken care of with leftover bond money from another bond. So if we have other bond money that's left over from projects, because what I'm getting at is that we can take the price tag down some because we have the opportunity to use leftover bond money from other projects to help bring down projects that would be included in the bond. We wouldn't have to put them in there.
Well, not necessarily, because we still have a lot of projects that we haven't finished right now. So for the bonds for the 2016 bond, we don't want to use those for these suggestions because we haven't finished still some of the projects for 2016.
Right.
So if though we were to have some funds left from 2016, there's still many other projects that we would come to the board with and ask your permission to be able to use them.
Okay.
A great question.
I do think that's a great question. May I add something? Is that all right?
Of course.
One of the things that's really good about this step in the process is that what we're trying to do is identify what we think these projects will cost at the point, some of this work isn't going to start right away. It may start in a couple of years. And so we're trying to gauge what we think is going to be happening in the construction market 2 years out, or maybe even 3 years out. And we don't want to be caught short. So you're trying to anticipate what escalation might be like, what you might need to have in terms of contingency, and just not knowing exactly what that's going to be. If we guess right, that's what creates a situation where you have some of those bond savings. So when they were trying to anticipate in the 2016 bond what they thought Wortham Oaks was going to cost, they did a good job, if you will, because now they have those extra bond savings that they didn't have to spend on Wortham Oaks to be sure you all got the school you wanted. So that's kind of where we are in the process right now.
Okay.
It's not so much about the bond savings from 2016 as it'll be from the bond savings within this bond that may give us an opportunity to do a little bit more than exactly what we've identified.
And I was wondering, like with our schools, did you all discuss at all any plans to like get generator systems in place at each of the schools in case we ever, run into the type of problem we did with the ice storm,
I don't recall us talking about generators.
We do have a generator in one of the projects that was identified. We got a lot of feedback from the maintenance department. We didn't identify that, though, as a district-wide need, in other words, for every campus. So that might be something we go back and revisit.
And what about like for the maintenance department, equipment for the maintenance department to take care of the grounds for all the different schools and the requirements that they need to keep everything, within
Looking sharp.
standards?
Yeah.
If I could address that one, that is something that we could definitely talk about in our operating budget, because it's very similar to the way Carr said for a computer or a laptop. We don't want to pay for, let's say, a lawnmower for 30 years.
Right.
So we could, if there's a need, we could definitely look into that using our general funds for those
Okay.
types of projects.
And the last thing was, and this may be a little bit too detailed for this, but when you were talking about the elementary school, middle school, high school, the feeder schools, certain schools feed into certain schools,
Yep.
and so have we thought about, like what we're doing with ELOF, making sure that the students that enter ELOF, the track that they're on, that they're going to feed into a middle school that's going to continue them on that track, and then ultimately end up in the high school where they can complete a program.
Like with JSTEM and TSTEM?
Yes,
Anna?
yes.
Right. So we've talked about both the vertical alignment from elementary to middle and high school. So we definitely talked about making sure we have that and the sustainability of it, along with making sure that we have the choice and opportunities of other things. So we've talked about both to offer both to our community.
Okay. And the land that he mentioned, is that the piece of land that we had discussed at one time about utilizing that to build, the substation for the school buses for the very reason he stated, so that, they're not trying to come all the way back over this way to park those buses?
Right.
Or,
I think, and please correct me, Carver, if I'm wrong, I think the land that we discussed was a land for the middle school and an elementary school. I think that's the land that we were talking about in
so
this.
then to do the substation, we would have to procure land for that, and we'd have to procure land for the swimming pool?
Not necessarily for the substation, because it doesn't take up as much property as a complete school campus would. So you may have opportunities for that to be done at some of the property you already own. It wouldn't take up a full site, I guess. is the way
Okay,
to put it.
like we could do one at Veterans Memorial,
Right.
okay. But the swimming pool and that
Would-
aquatic center will require,
Its own property. It would be much harder to integrate onto an
Okay.
existing site.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Eaton. Great questions. Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, I know you've served on the committee, so please, comments or questions?
Yes, I don't have any questions. I feel very scrubbed into everything here. But I think, if I could just narrate the experience of being on the committee, I think there has been a wide-ranging discussion over many months. And I felt like in this last committee meeting, people started to coalesce when we saw numbers and we saw how much we could do with different budgets. And that really felt like where, there was a lot of consensus with, one dissenting opinion. But I think that people were surprised because I think we thought we'd have to deprioritize more things than we actually did. And that there was a lot of room to do big things with a budget that felt reasonable to ask our voters to approve.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to Ms. Pichelle. You're next, if you'd like. Okay, we might come back to her unless she can hear me. Ms. Pichelle? Okay, we're going to come back to her, and we're going to go next to Mr. Macias.
Yes, it's been great joining the committee. For the record, I abstained from the vote, so my vote was not on there, just for the community's sake, I understand that. And then I just feel like I need to briefly mention the gentleman that didn't dissent out of dislike or just basically he wanted more information, a guy I could fist bump. I can totally understand what he was talking about, wanting more about where those dollars are going, which is what the community is going to ask us. Where are we going to put those dollars? So just want to kind of put that out there just so folks know that's sort of where the origin of that dissension came from. But in terms of looking at this proposal, a no tax increase bond is typically a slam dunk. I can't even think of a time in which there's been a failed bond, except for that one prop a few years ago with us where the community did not support these efforts. So going to the community with this right now, I think would be very favorable in terms of getting done. It was interesting to note that the swimming pool was still number 20, even though there has been historically some discussion about adding that. I think you're on point with the collaboration. I would be curious to know if we added it into the $300 million, which not this time because it didn't even raise up to that mark. in the future, and we collaborate, that we have a future passage of a facility. I think if we put the numbers, because we have a swimming pool, and there is a cost, and I've been told that we could improve that facility for our students, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's important. But to do it in a future non-tax increase bond in 3 or 4 years with the right partnerships, I think could be a slam dunk. So my thought about the process of not being part of it completely, like Ms. Rodriguez has been, I liked what I saw, and I appreciated having all that input from the community. I guess the last thing I would say is that what we're doing is vital, and so the next aspect of informing the community at large that may not be aware of the bond is the next hurdle, because at any rate, they need to know why we're exercising the right to put a bond. And I think we can do that. The last thing is November. You recommended, or you were talking about a November election, which means we would have to pass something in late July or August to put it on the ballot for November. I don't know. I'd like a little more information on that. We usually have seen it in May. We've seen it in November. It really does, go at various times. But I just feel like May's always been a better time period. It doesn't feel rushed, for one. But if we're ready to go and we have all our ducks lined up, I don't see why we wouldn't. But that would be my only other apprehension, to kind of see what that timeline looks like. So I don't want to ever feel like we have to rush it tomorrow. I mean, that's not going to bode well. We need to put a committee together. There has to be a lot of other infrastructure for a bond that you guys will end up doing.
Right, and just so you know that before all this started, we did specifically talk about the timeline. And we did talk about the timeline of July and still being able to do all the things that we needed to do. But we would gladly pull that timeline back out and share that.
Well, yeah, of course, and that might be one thing that I'm trying to catch up on. This is my second month back. So in terms of November was laid out, that's great if that's how it plays out. But that would be my only apprehension. So other than that, it's not a big one, but certainly one to consider. But I guess the last question to ask you is, are you still going to try to massage the numbers to include a greater than 300 million? Are you satisfied with 300 million in terms of what we can offer to the community at no increase? Because you talked a little bit about that, so I kind of want to get your gut on where you're feeling. Do we need to ask for more? Are you going to ask the committee on Monday? Because we meet Monday. Do we want more? Or I'm very comfortable on the no tax increase level right now.
I agree. I think where we need to be with no taxes, with a no tax rate increase, is our sweet spot. I'm not married to 300 million as a round number, that it needs to be some specific number. Right now, the work that we showed and where we are in terms of estimating the cost of that work, we're at 3025. And I don't know that 2.5 million, that in and of itself generates a tax increase either. Because what our financial advisor did, what the district's financial advisor did, is they just looked at 300 million as a round number. If we go back to them and we said, well, what would 3025 do? We might find that also is a no tax increase. When I said earlier that we were still looking at the numbers, what I meant was not so much that we're looking at what the numbers add up to, as we're looking at what each of those numbers represents. Because I think we've got a sense that we're moving in the right direction with what it is we're trying to do, but we want to be sure, and this goes back to your question as well, Ms. Eaton, do we have the right number for each of those different categories? And so that's where I think there's more pencil sharpening, to use an adage, both for next Monday and before potentially talking to you all about this again in July.
All right, well, thank you. That's all I have.
If I could add to that, I think Mr. Atkins wanted to share a little bit more on the timeline in the November election.
Yes, unfortunately, the legislature took the May election option away from bond issues, so we can only do a bond issue in November.
I was not aware of that. When did they do that?
Last session.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That answers that question. Thank you.
No problem. If I'd like to go back to Ms. Pichelle. Ms. Pichelle, would you like to make any comments, questions, suggestions?
Thank you, Dr. Ball. I'd like to say thank you so much to the Growth and Planning Committee for the work that you have done. I know how many hours you all have put into getting to the point where we are now and having something to present to the board. So thank you for your time. I'm very interested in seeing what that breakdown would be of 3 propositions. So I'm looking forward to meeting in July because I'm wondering by then, will you have something more specific to give to us to let us know what those 3 specific areas and those 3 props would look like?
Yes.
And that's about it. I'm right on board with a district and community pool. I think just about everybody out there knows how much that I've been pushing for this and hoping that this would be something that would be more successful this time. If it has to be standalone on the bond, fingers crossed, this is a different day and age, a different time, and I just hope that although that might have to be a standalone item proposition on the bond ballot, fingers crossed it's going to be more successful this time. So thank you very much.
I have a question now that Ms. Pichelle had some questions and comments. So it's both for Carr and for Bill, just to make sure that I understand. So here goes my question. I'll try to get it out right. So if we were to include the pool, we know that that would take us over the 300 million. We know that if it takes us over the 300 million, we know then that it raises the tax increase. Am I understanding that correctly? I have more questions and comments, but first I need to make sure if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
So I need to know what is very important for me to understand right now. Is the board wanting us, if we do the pool, the entire piece then, the list of all 1 through 16, is going to be for a tax increase? Is that something that the board would want us to go do? So I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that it completely changes. We put the pool in there.
Dr. Ball?
Yes.
Is there still time to discuss partnerships?
No, ma'am, not for the pool at this time, because including the pool right now, it increases the amount, which then automatically puts us into having a bond that increases the tax for our community members.
I
understand.
I would recommend that we work to make those community relationships, try and get some MOUs done, and then if so wish, we come back with a standalone bond for the natatorium.
Since it has to be on its own proposition anyway.
Correct.
One other, may I add?
Just one more piece of clarification. So, Bill, what you're saying is we could do this, call this bond in July for the 1 through 16 items, okay? Pass that with a no tax increase, then start again the growth and planning and the partnership started right afterwards, so we have more time for the partnerships, for the development of other resources and things like that. Then again, come next summer, we call for another bond for just the pool. Am I understanding correctly?
Possibly. I mean, it may be 2 years. I mean, remember, we're going off estimated values, and if our values grow a little more than we estimated, which we hope they do, then we may be able to come back in a couple of years and do a smaller non-tax increase bond.
And the reason this is so important, and in case we have to go again and start with Ms. King, the reason this is so important is because the entire time during the growth and planning, I have led the committee to believe that this would all be done without increasing the taxes. And I have to be very clear with the committee if the board is giving me a different direction, then I have to go back and change that. And I don't know if the committee would feel comfortable because the entire work has been to say, we're going to do everything we can, as many projects, but at the same time go back to our community and say no tax increase. Follow-up questions, Ms. Pichelle?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, Dr. Ball?
Yes, that I feel like I would have to go back to the committee then and say that things have changed because the entire time that we were doing this work, we were saying that we were doing this work to maximize our dollars and do as many projects, but not raise the taxes. So if the board is...
I understand. And in the future, if we can come back to this district community pool and we have more discussion with business partnerships, then we could make the pool a separate bond. I am in agreement with that.
And so am I. That is excellent. Thank you, ma'am. I understand your direction, ma'am. Thank you.
But we definitely can't put it on this bond and it eats up every penny and we can't get any of our other work done.
Yes,
No, I'm not in agreement with that.
Yes, ma'am. We're on the same page. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next person now. I think you were done, right, Mr. Macias? Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Diaz.
How many bonds have we passed? Historically, have the bonds that we passed in the past had a tax increase? Or are they always in that safe zone? Do you know?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. Do you? Some have had tax increases.
I
Some did
didn't
not
hear
have
you,
tax
Dr. Fields,
increases.
and I want to make sure Ms. Pichelle heard you. Could you repeat it, and I'll repeat it into here? They did have tax increases?
I would say
Oh.
Bill just said most had tax increases.
Okay.
I know that some had tax increases.
Okay, so it was a combination of some tax and then some did not. Thank you.
And the intent to stay, let me give you context of what I'm about to say, that way it makes sense. So whenever I think of a school district bond or change in an organization, you have incremental versus exponential. Incremental focuses on, can you hear me? All right. So whenever I think about change or building a system or changing a system in an organization, you can focus on incremental or you can focus on exponential, right? Incremental focusing in on 10% increase on something, exponential 10x, right? How do you make bigger gains in the long run, right? So when I think of our vision for Judson to become that destination district and make sure that we're going in the right direction, I don't want us to limit, and we said this at the committee meetings, we shouldn't limit ourselves on what the vision for the district is, right? So I agree. I want to have an option. I, as a father, as a taxpayer, as a member of this board, would like to see an option where it's a no increase, right? That's a safe spot. I think we can put in projects in there and say, look, this is our safe zone. However, if we are truly committed to making sure that we can build the district that we're all envisioning, that the community deserves, that my children deserve, then I think it's also prudent of us to make sure that we also have that option. Because the other thing that we need to remember is that we made a commitment to our employees to ensure that we can sustain the wages and the salaries that we've committed to this year. So the only way that we can do that is increasing recruitment and retention. So when I look at the priority list, not to say that I don't agree with them, they're all needed, obviously, but I think this board also needs to synthesize the priorities with the tactics that we need in order to increase our student engagement, going back to that lever report that we looked at before to understand where is it that we have opportunity. That way we do we do two things, right? We play catch up where we need to, because that's obviously needed, but then we also sow the seeds that are going to bring us those exponential growth, not right now, the exponential growth practices or tactics that we need, right? All that to say, I think we should consider having the safe route and then going back to committee and saying, if we wanted to do more than that, this is what it would look like. Let the committee decide how they want to approach it, knowing that, you know, I'll give you a silly example. If we were to fix tracks, does that bring in more students? I would say not really, but we need more students in order to continue the growth of the district. So it's a really delicate balance of how do we address the immediate needs, yet leverage the dollars that we can obtain in order to help strengthen the system so that the system itself starts cultivating that growth that we need. Because the reality is every child brings us dollars, right? So all that to say, I think I want to have more discussion on this and really look at the projects with this board, with the committee, and understand how do those align to our, I guess, comprehensive growth strategy, and the vision that we've talked about a lot. Does that make sense? And I guess I put that out there to the board members for a reflection. Do y'all have a question on what I'm saying? Like, I want to gauge your temperature on what I just said. If you even understand what I said.
So I
I could have
certainly
rambled
want to
on a
make
lot.
sure that I understand what you said. I
Sure.
certainly want to make sure that I understood that. So I guess what I think you're saying is, do we have something in here that is going to build our enrollment so we can sustain all the things that we've promised? And is the part about innovation and creativity built in here, or is it just the basic things like a track? Did I kind of?
Más o menos, right? So,
Okay.
and I wasn't at the last meeting because I was having a child, or my wife was having my child. But if the committee, and I think Ms. Rodriguez, you said this, if the committee was shocked at how much we could accomplish kind of around that 300, do they have the appetite? Does the committee have the appetite? Can we take a temperature of, okay, well, what more could they possibly consider, right?
Are you asking us to ask the committee if they want to go to increase the taxes?
No.
No.
We're not asking the committee to
Okay.
increase the taxes. We're asking the committee to set the vision and the priorities for what the district needs. Now, does that come with or without a tax increase? Sure, but we're not asking the committee to make that decision. We're asking them to set the priorities for the vision of the district.
So
Right.
I can speak to that, maybe having been there on the last meeting. So the list of 20 things was not generated in the meeting. Those were the things that was the culmination of the entire discussion over.
And you know, my memory's bad.
No, I know we've seen them, but in order to take them in again, I think, you know, when we saw them, it was trying to prioritize them. Now that we have the list, does that change our minds at all? And I'll give you a really simple example of the way that it's playing out in my head. So if I have if my wife gives me a list of chores or projects to do around the home, and I have no idea what they cost, I just know that I got to get these things done. And I actually come in and I think to myself, it's going to cost me $1,000. It actually cost me 700. Well, then I have more appetite to do more. So I could go back to my wife and say, is there anything else? So I guess wrapping it all up and going back and saying, do we have more appetite to do more? Is this really what you wanted overall? Or were you limiting yourself in your head? And now that you have more discovery or more information, does that change your mind at all?
Right.
That's what I'm getting at. Because I think
And I understand that part of what you're saying, but also my understanding is that there's a few things that were not on the list because, as he stated earlier, why would we want to add computer systems to a bond and take 30 years, when we know that the computer, 5 to 7 years is about what they're good for. And now we're talking, also probably shorter than that when you're dealing with the fact that, children are handling them. So I definitely understand what you're saying. It's just, I wanted to make sure that you understood that we've seen most of these, because my understanding of us doing it first and then have the committee, Dr. Fields form the committee and make selections from the community at large, was so that we could get, that's our feedback from a sampling of the community about how they feel about these different projects. And so now we get to look at what they came up with and kind of put it all together. Am I looking at that right?
Mm-hmm.
If I
Okay,
may.
I'm
I so appreciate the visionary approach that Mr. Diaz has. It's a lens that I'm not always accustomed to looking at. But the constituents I represent want that middle school. It's desperately needed. My concern is that if we go beyond a no tax increase bond at this time, that perhaps that doesn't get approved, and then we've just put ourselves way back. So I'm inclined to be a little more cautious at this run, and then let's say, okay, hey, look at all the wonderful support we've got for what we've put out here, all these amazing things we're going to be able to do, and let's get some more the committee to keep working and say, where else can we go? What is next? I think we've got a really good start on bringing in some of the students when we look at adding the maker spaces, when we look at upgrading the facilities. Those are things that appeal to parents who have their children in schools. They don't want them in PE in an air-conditioned school. Students leave because they don't have a track they can run on. So these are all things that do actually go back to making sure that we keep and attract students. Is it a grand visionary, what was it that SAISD, the 1.3 billion? No, but I honestly don't think our community would support something that broad. So for me right now, I appreciate the work that's been done. And I think that the committee, to go back to them now, puts us beyond also the date to get all this stuff rolling to be on a November bond. And then that would delay us a whole nother year. And I just don't think we can do that. Does that make sense at all, sir?
Yeah, absolutely, that's fair, yep.
And remember, we're in constant competition. Well, okay, I won't say competition, but, whew, we're getting idea school, we're getting academies, they're popping up left and right. And now they almost building next door to our schools. So we have to move cautiously, but at the same time, making sure that we're providing our students with the same type of opportunities that they are as much as we can. And that, to me, will entice parents to take a look at us and not just say, well, no, we want to go over here to this school because it's the new thing on the block. If they can get that same thing and the kid is already in Judson, let's keep them here.
I do think that we absolutely, the direction we've gone in with the board in terms of equity and making sure that we provide all these opportunities to our students is definitely the track to continue on. I just think at this point we are kind of like, okay, here we are for this round, and then we look ahead to what happens next, pursuing a pool and an auditorium, and then what other programs and opportunities do we put in place, and maybe it's not just a one proposition bond there. But I don't know that we have the time that it would take to convey all this to the community about what we're trying to do when we've just started the work ourselves in terms of how we want to draw our students in. Does that make sense? Okay.
But I do want to just go back, and sorry, it's not number by page, but in regards to the academic programs and the makerspace opportunities, this really does allow us to have a lot of what I think you're asking for is the work to make long-term plans as to what is going to drive our district to increase our enrollment, have a better collaborative curriculum and integration of technology, instruction, and everything at our campuses, because I think that is something that our parents are looking for. And then when you look at it this way, I love when Carr did these slides, because you can clearly see that this is a bond for everybody. This isn't a bond just for the north side or the south side, but you see that this is a bond for everybody because you hit every single campus with something. So just wanted to point that out, because on these you can clearly see how it points out that everybody is getting something. And I think that's very important, going back to what you said in regards to making sure that we're providing the very best for our students and for all of them. That's something that the board has been very clear about.
Dr. Ball, with maker spaces and with some of the items here, I mean, having the space is one thing, but do you already have a plan or a vision on how to empower campus leadership and the teachers on how to appropriately use them? That way they're not just a space, right?
Absolutely. And it's just not something that we're going to ask for the dollars for bond funds, but that's something that we're going to take care of either with our title funds, our general funds, in regards to how do we provide the PD that's going to be needed? How do we provide the coaching for that? So that's another separate thing that we're working on the side. So when these things come about, we're ready for full implementation.
In my opinion, in order to get these things, for lack of a better term, sold, that vision on how they're going to be used has to be part of the messaging and the storytelling, because, and I would normally be one of them to say, if I'm being asked for an investment on something, and tell me how it's actually going to be used at the time, not afterwards. So
Sure.
I think that's going to be powerful storytelling in order to convey it to the proverbial Mrs. Martinez, right?
And we can definitely do that in regards to, once we progress, then we start to develop our packaging of sharing the facts of what it'll look like. And not just for this component. I see what you're saying now. You want to see exactly how it's going to be used.
Or maybe not exactly, but
A clearer picture?
an iteration of it. Mm-hmm. Because what we're selling is, and I say selling, but that's my term of art, but what we're asking for is the trust and their investment, right? Their trust, whatever resource they have, in our execution. So that way, if year 2 or whatever, next year or the year after, we go back for something else, we built in that goodwill, and it's all being rolled out comprehensively.
Sure, and I could definitely do that. I guess I've been very careful of trying to make sure that we don't put the cart before the horse. But at the same time, we'll make sure that when we're painting the picture, we're telling the complete story of both parts.
Thank you.
And those spaces will help, I'm sorry, Ms. Kanoy, with our Adventure Club project. We have teachers in training over the summer because of our plans of having more after-school projects added to Adventure Club, the computers, the math. So this gives them more of an opportunity to spread out in more than just the cafeteria area. And I know that they can't be done right away. It's going to take time, but at least we have a plan where we can see where it's going to benefit our students educational-wise, and as you stated earlier, for us to continue to bridge that gap. We got a long way to go on that, but with the project that you suggested and you're working on now, I think it's all going to come together to really assist our students.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. That's all we have, ma'am.
The next one was thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you all.
leading our group. Truly appreciate your expertise and sage guidance. And I do also want to reiterate what Ms. Michelle said about thanking our entire committee for the hard work that they've put in. And I truly hope that they understand that we really do appreciate everything that they've done.
Well, I'll be sure we share that with
Please
them.
do.
And I just really appreciate y'all's dialogue tonight. This is really helpful for us. So thank you all for this time.
Thank you. So our next is the technology update.
Yes, so we will have a technology update by Lacey Gosh, and then also by Dr. Taganoff. She'll share some information. Also, I think everybody's very well aware that we have been going through a very unique situation. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Well, we have been going through a very unique situation this week, but wanted to kind of report basically the state of what we have been doing this week and truthfully some of the successes that we've seen over the past week. We have been able to issue laptops to almost all central office staff that needed it for essential business purposes, as well as additional Chromebooks given out to principals and other individuals, especially for summer school purposes, to maintain our ability to continue operations. We have over 600 hotspots that we have dispersed throughout the district, which also included hotspots that we were able to provide for state testing. So all of our students who needed to complete their state testing online to receive the academic supports that were necessary, they were able to successfully do that with the use of the hotspots. We were able to also maintain our high school Edgenuity program with the use of the hotspots and our students' Chromebooks. So we are continuing to do that, and we'll continue to do that next week, as well as our regular summer school programs. Those were also able to continue. Let's see, we also continued with the deployment of additional cell phones to the summer school campuses so that we had phone contacts and were able to maintain that, and we also even were able to provide one here at central office. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I just need my laptop, so I was just asking Dr. Fields if I could have it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought perhaps you could, it wasn't going through the system. Also, other high notes, we have continued with our business operations. So we have successfully completed our payroll processes. We're able to process purchase orders. We have continued with our hiring processes. Most of our employees who are dealing with the HR issues and the business side through the use of the hotspots and the laptops that we have, we've been able to continue that and basically operate as usual through this process. We are also in the process right now. Over the last couple of days, we have been asking for individuals' laptops to be brought into our offices. We are putting some security endpoint management software on them, which allows us to monitor them. And so we have begun the process of installing that. We either have or will be very shortly here this evening or tomorrow morning contacting the campuses, and we will have individuals from our department out at Veterans Memorial High School as well as the PAC and also at Wagner High School, asking for our staff who are at home that may have taken their laptop at home to potentially bring their device in. We can install this endpoint management software on it and continue to monitor it to make sure that those stay viable and usable for them over the summer. So we will be scheduling that for our folks, and that will be sent out for our staff members who would like to go ahead and bring that in. We were also able to get our PEIMS submissions and our textbook orders out. And so we are on schedule and we are continuing to press on. And I have to say thank you to Ms. Taganaut and her staff. They have been fantastic about getting communications out for us and supporting us, as well as all of the other departments. I know facilities and maintenance has been incredible, and the technology team that we have here at Judson, they are truly an amazing group of people, and we are doing what we can to help get through this crisis.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate you too. And before we open it up for questions, let's have Dr. Taganoff, if you'd like to share your part, and then like that, if there's still questions, then we can definitely open it up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just like Ms. Gosh was saying, there's a lot of different people that we need to thank for us to be able to be at this point of accomplishing a lot of things. With COVID, we faced a lot of challenges. With the snowstorm, we faced a lot of challenges. And here we are facing another set of challenges. And we keep seeming to come together and pivot and adapt to make sure that we are doing the right things for our students, continuing our summer programs, and making sure that we're having transparent communication to our constituents, our community, and to our staff. So I just wanted to provide a very brief overview of some of the communications things that have happened since the whole challenge arose in the district. We created a web page, kind of sort of a landing page. When you log on to our website, there's an alert that pops up that briefly explains that our systems are down. And right underneath that is a link that says stay updated here. And so that takes you straight to a page that has all of the text of the updates that we've shared with the community and staff so far. So that's important that we have that recorded and is there and available for anybody that visits our website. Right next to all of those updates, we have kind of a running FAQ. So we do have some general questions: what happened, should I be worried, answers that we are able to provide the public, answers that we're able to provide our staff are written there as well. So we update that FAQ once we start getting questions that we're getting a lot of, and so we'll go ahead and add those in there. And so it is important to stay, if you want to stay updated with the information, to visit that site, because we are posting what we can. Some of it is questions about the attack. Some of it is questions just about how do I get a hold of someone in transportation, or is summer school still going on? And so we are keeping the public updated through our website and landing page. But in addition to that, the team is posting things on social media. We have big followers on Facebook. We are posting on Twitter and Instagram. And we are seeing that a lot of our staff members, a lot of our parents and family members are also sharing the information. And so that is definitely a good thing, because we want people to know what is going on. We are also able to use our mass communications system to get notices out to parents and our staff of all of our updates. That's not connected to any of our systems, so we can send an email or a text or a phone recording through that means as well. We have established an external email address, a Gmail address just for the district, so all of the inquiries are funneled to one central email address, and we've been able to monitor that and just shoot them out to the different or appropriate people to be able to answer those questions if they have specific questions. We are establishing a call center so that we can also take calls. We do realize that there are some people in the community that may be uncomfortable receiving an email or sending an email to us, and so that is something that will hopefully go live on Monday. We are getting the phones ready. We've got some scripts ready so that we can also field calls in that way. And then we're working with our media outlets very closely to make sure that we reach everybody. So we want to just make sure that we have transparent communication and that our community understands that we are committed to resolving this and providing as much information as we can when we can. And then I just also want to mention that we have had an outpouring of support from our immediate community and then also outside districts just sending well wishes, and we're very appreciative of that.
If you haven't had a chance to go to what Dr. Taganoff calls a landing page, it does have very good information. It explains on there what happened. Is my information or student data, safe? So it's a very good resource. So if this is something that you can use to, if you're asked, where can I get more information, please send them to this. Because as we get more information, we're constantly posting. You'll see this was just recently updated as recent as 4 o'clock today. So it's something that we're constantly working on. So again, the communications team has done a fabulous job. Great people in our district here. Thank you. But let's open it up to any questions.
Can I get the Gmail account?
Oh, yes. It is JISD.communications@gmail.com.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our wonderful technology and communications department who have really shouldered a big burden this last week and a half. Thank you. 6B, Judson Education Foundation 2021 second quarter update.
Thank you. We'll ask Ms. Greathouse to please share the report. We had a super successful golf tournament. Very, very proud of all the players and all the hard work, so thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So in your board packets, I did include our second quarter update for the foundation. And I had a fantastic presentation started, but other things happened during this week, so I apologize. I don't have anything visual for you guys. I have all of our current balances as of May 31st listed on there for you, including our operations account, our emergency savings, our JLA GED account that the campus handles themselves, and some other emergency savings account that we have there as well. In this year, we have awarded our student scholarships totaling $49,750. Our campus grants, which is we awarded during Teacher Appreciation Week, came out to $14,993. Our teacher and principal grants, we are cycling to the fall this year. Normally we do it in the spring, but as a foundation, we discussed the best use of funds are for the teachers to get awarded in the fall and be able to use it all year round, rather than being awarded in May and then going for summer and then shifts are made. So this year we're going to start them in the fall. And we have allocated $34,757 for that, totaling $99,500 for scholarships and grants for 2021. In our second quarter, we did have our two largest fundraisers, and we were very successful this year. And I really want to send a huge thank you to our senior staff, to Dr. Ball, to our facilities planning. Ms. Keaton just walked out. But we have a great support system that is really making fantastic connections with our business partners and just relationships that they know the good work that our district is doing and that the foundation is good stewards of our funds. So it's been a fantastic year amidst the pandemic that we're trying to get out of now. So our gala was virtual this year. Our income for that was $72,004 with very low expensive of $11,972, which made a profit of $60,031.13. And our golf tournament was our largest yet. We had 31 teams, which is 142 golfers. So thank you everyone who came out. Mr. Diaz really showed his strong golf game there, which I really appreciate you coming. Our income was $89,595, expenses of $10,215, which gave us a profit of $79,379. So next year will be a great year for scholarships and grants for students and teachers here. Upcoming Jeff fundraisers and just events and campaigns for our third quarter. This weekend we have a very busy weekend. We have our football camp on Saturday and Sunday at Wagner High School. Today is the last day for registration, so anybody watching or listening, today is the last day to register your child for that football camp. Our basketball tournament is also Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is a partnership we have with a third-party organization. It's a really turnkey event for us, and they give a donation back to us, and that's this weekend as well. In August, we will have our top donor recognition, our top 10 donors for the year. That will be before our August board meeting. And in August, from August to September, we'll have our employee give campaign, which is just something that we do every year that the employees agree to give in their monthly paychecks for the foundation. And the last part of the report, we do have our Ameritrade account, which is our investment account. So if y'all have any questions. Fantastic.
Thank you, Ms. Greathouse. I will say that I ran into some of the attorneys from Linebarger, and they said how much fun they had at the golf tournament, and it was so great, and that they were so excited for us to do so well. And they gave great compliments to the people who ran the event. So thank you so much for everything that you do for us.
I appreciate
I have a question, Madam President, Vice President.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I'd like to know from Ms. Greathouse, are scholarships also going to be awarded for certain students that may want to attend the football camp but may have financial issues?
Yes, I did notify all the principals, did receive 5 slots for their students to attend the football camp, and I've received those names from those teachers.
So
Principals,
all
I'm sorry.
5 slots are filled?
From the campuses that reached out to their community and were able to give those away and that were interested, I have received those from them, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you for the work that the foundation has done.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Closed session. Oh, excuse me, skipped right on down past update on board advisory committees. I think we've heard from Growth and Planning. Is there anything from the Hall of Honor Committee?
There was a meeting that that was in process. It was a couple of weeks ago. Basically, we were just reviewing the rating criteria for potential inductees and just making everything as streamlined.
Thank you. And I attended the Insurance Committee meeting, which during which the committee came to a consensus on what proposal they're going to bring to the board in July for us to approve in terms of how we're going with insurance. And I'm excited about the step that we're taking, and I think it's going to be very beneficial for our employees. Update on board training, conferences, events, and consider future agenda item requests by board members. And I'll go person by person. Mr. Diaz, do you have anything?
So I did go to a conference. I don't remember. I had a child last week. I don't remember where I was. I went for a little bit, and I got to participate in a session with Dr. Phil Gore from TASB, kind of going over governance and good governance. So he did say something that really stood out to me that I wrote. He said that the most impactful thing that he's heard from a board is for somebody to say that they needed radical responsibility and that there was a culture problem in the district and that the culture was them, right? So that board having the self-awareness to say, we could be better. And that stood out to me because I know we've all had that conversation in the past on asking ourselves, you know, what can we do better? How do we provide the appropriate radical responsible approach to governing and to providing our communities what they deserve. Hence the investment that we're making at Leadership ISD and so on and so forth. That was the only thing that I wanted to share. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Macias, do you have anything?
No, I do not at this time.
Ms. Rodriguez?
No, thank you.
Ms. Eaton?
I don't have anything at this time.
Ms. King?
I do. Okay, so I did attend the Texas Association of School Board, or TASB, as well with Mr. Diaz in person. I was happy to be able to attend in person downtown here in San Antonio. And it was just great to be able to fellowship with other board members across the state here in person. And what I noticed that a lot of the trainings that were being implemented there were in regards to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm just really proud of our district for having those open communication and also making sure that we're implementing what is needed here in the district in regards to equity. So, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Bichelle, do you have anything you wanted to share?
No, I am attending SLI virtually, the Fort Worth virtual, but still attending. I had a couple of good ones today. I'm looking forward to some more tomorrow. I'll get back to you in July.
Thank you. And I don't have anything at this time either. So now we will go into closed session. 7A pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, discussing personnel, the personnel report, and updates including new hires, resignations, and administrative appointments. 1, elementary principals. B, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, attorney consultation regarding legal issues related to the pending litigation in the matter styled cause number 2018-CI-21264, Sharon Jansky versus Judson Independent School District in the 73rd District Court of Bexar County, Texas. C, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, attorney consultation regarding legal issues related to potential, anticipated, or pending construction litigation and construction issues. D, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072, deliberation regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, deliberation regarding real property. E, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, attorney consultation regarding proposed settlement. F, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices or security audits. G, pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.089, attorney consultation regarding legal issues and deliberations regarding security devices or security audits. And we are going into closed session at 7:43.
Lacey, if we could start to set up, I'd like to do E, F, and G first.